The fluorescent lights in the grand ballroom flickered once, twice, then died completely, plunging the charity gala into an uncomfortable dimness. The room fell silent except for the nervous laughter of wealthy donors in their $1,000 gowns and tailored suits. On stage, billionaire tech mogul Victoria Sterling paused mid-speech, her presentation about funding children's education frozen on the darkened screens behind her. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced with practiced composure, "it appears we're experiencing some technical difficulties. Please remain seated while we address this issue." That's when Marcus Rodriguez appeared from the shadows near the service entrance, pushing a maintenance cart loaded with tools and replacement bulbs. His worn janitor's uniform stood out starkly against the sea of designer clothing. He moved quietly along the wall, his weathered hands already assessing the electrical panel with the confidence of someone who'd spent years keeping buildings running while others barely noticed his existence. The whispers started immediately. "Is that the janitor? What's he doing here during the event? Someone should tell security." But Marcus had work to do. He'd been maintaining the Grand Meridian Hotel for 8 years, and he knew every wire, every circuit, every switch in this building better than his own apartment. As he opened the electrical panel and began tracing the problem with a small flashlight clenched between his teeth, few people in that room could have imagined the journey that brought him to this moment. The story of Marcus Rodriguez began 3 years earlier in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city. He'd been a different man then, an electrical engineer with a promising career at a major construction firm, married to Elena, the love of his life since college. Their son Diego was 5 years old, bright as a shooting star, with Elena's dark eyes and Marcus's stubborn determination to understand how everything worked. Elena had been the dreamer between them. She'd taught 2nd grade at Roosevelt Elementary and spent her evenings volunteering at the community center, helping other immigrant families navigate the complexities of American bureaucracy. She'd been the one to encourage Marcus to take risks, to believe in bigger possibilities for their family. "One day, mijo," she'd tell Diego as she tucked him into bed, "your papa is going to build bridges that touch the sky, and you're going to be whatever you dream of being." But dreams, Marcus learned, could shatter as suddenly as glass. The accident happened on a Tuesday evening in October. Elena was driving home from parent-teacher conferences when a drunk driver ran a red light at the intersection of 5th and Main. The impact was so severe that she died instantly, the doctors said. No suffering. As if that somehow made the crater in Marcus's chest feel less devastating. In the months that followed, grief consumed everything. Marcus couldn't concentrate at work. He'd stare at blueprints and see nothing but Elena's handwriting on Diego's homework. He'd walk into meetings and hear nothing but the echo of her laughter from the kitchen on Sunday mornings. His supervisor, initially sympathetic, grew frustrated with missed deadlines and incomplete projects. "Take some time," they'd said. "Get yourself together." But getting himself together meant getting Diego together too, and Diego was drowning. The boy barely spoke anymore, barely ate, barely smiled. He'd wake up screaming from nightmares and ask when Mama was coming home. How do you explain forever to a 5-year-old? Marcus burned through his savings on grief counseling for both of them. Elena's medical bills, despite insurance, created a mountain of debt. The funeral costs, the lawyer fees for settling her estate. When the construction company finally let him go, restructuring, they called it, Marcus found himself unemployed with a broken son and bills that multiplied like weeds. That's when he saw the job posting for a maintenance position at the Grand Meridian Hotel. The pay was less than half what he'd made as an engineer, but it came with health insurance and steady hours. Night shift, mostly, which meant he could be there when Diego got home from school. "It's temporary," he told himself as he filled out the application, "just until I get back on my feet." 3 years later, temporary had become his life. Marcus worked from 10 at night until 6 in the morning, maintaining the luxury hotel that catered to business executives and wealthy tourists. He fixed broken air conditioning units, replaced burnt-out bulbs, unclogged drains, and ensured that paying guests never had to think about the infrastructure that made their comfort possible. During the day, he slept for a few hours, picked Diego up from school, helped with homework, made dinner, and tried to be both mother and father to a boy who still missed his mama every single day. The other hotel staff were kind enough. Maria, who worked housekeeping, sometimes brought extra sandwiches from the employee cafeteria. James, the night security guard, would share stories about his own kids and offered a cover for Marcus when Diego had school events during the day. But Marcus remained largely invisible to the hotel's clientele, just another working man in a uniform, part of the machinery that made their world run smoothly. Diego, now 8, had adapted to their new reality with the resilience that children possess but shouldn't need to use. He'd learned to do his homework at the kitchen table while Marcus slept, to make his own breakfast before school, to walk himself to the after-school program where he'd wait until his father could pick him up. But in quiet moments, Marcus would catch his son staring at the framed photo of Elena on the mantel, and he'd see the questions in the boy's eyes that neither of them knew how to answer. The Grand Meridian Hotel regularly hosted charity events, corporate functions, and society gatherings. Marcus had worked during dozens of them over the years, moving invisibly through service corridors while important people made important speeches about important causes. He'd grown accustomed to being background noise in other people's significant moments. But tonight felt different. Tonight's gala was raising money for educational programs in underserved communities, schools like the one Elena had taught at, neighborhoods like the one where Marcus and Diego now lived. As he'd prepared for his shift, Marcus had caught glimpses of the event's setup, elegant displays showcasing student artwork, videos of children talking about their dreams. Statistics about the achievement gap that Elena used to cite in her passionate dinner table monologues about equity in education. The featured speaker was Victoria Sterling, founder and CEO of Sterling Technologies, a company that had revolutionized cloud computing and made her one of the youngest billionaires in the world. Marcus recognized her from magazine covers and news articles. She'd built her empire from nothing, the stories said. Started in a garage, just like the clichés. But unlike the clichés, she'd maintained a reputation for genuine philanthropy, for using her wealth to create opportunities for others rather than simply accumulating more for herself. As Marcus worked in the electrical panel, tracing the source of the power failure through years of practiced expertise, he could feel the restless energy of the room behind him. These were people accustomed to problems being solved instantly, preferably by someone else. The longer the lights stayed dim, the more agitated they became. "How long is this going to take?" someone muttered. "This is embarrassing," whispered another voice. "They should have backup systems." Marcus found the problem, a blown transformer in the main distribution panel, likely caused by the strain of powering all the additional lighting and audiovisual equipment for the event. It was a relatively simple fix if you knew what you were doing and had the right replacement parts, which he did. But it would require shutting down power to the entire ballroom for about 10 minutes while he swapped out the component. He approached the edge of the stage where Victoria Sterling stood waiting, her presentation remote held loosely in one hand. Up close, she was smaller than she appeared in photographs, but she carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from years of making decisions that affected thousands of people's livelihoods. "Excuse me, ma'am," Marcus said quietly, not wanting to draw more attention than necessary. "I found the problem. I can fix it, but I'll need to cut power to the whole room for about 10 minutes. Victoria turned toward him, and for a moment Marcus saw something unexpected in her expression. Not impatience or dismissal, but genuine attention. She was actually listening to him. 10 minutes, she repeated. You're certain you can fix it? Yes, ma'am. I've been maintaining this building for 8 years. It's a blown transformer in the main panel. I've got a replacement. She nodded once, decisively. Do what you need to do. Marcus returned to his work, but as he prepared to shut down the power, he heard Victoria Sterling's voice addressing the room through a battery-powered microphone someone had found. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to experience a brief power outage while our maintenance technician resolves the issue. Rather than sit in the dark, let me tell you about someone who would have appreciated being here tonight. Marcus paused, transformer halfway out of its housing, curious despite himself. Her name was Elena Rodriguez, Victoria continued, and Marcus felt the world tilt sideways. She taught at Roosevelt Elementary for 6 years. Every morning, she arrived early to make sure her classroom was ready. Every evening, she stayed late to help students who needed extra attention. She volunteered weekends at the community center, helping families navigate educational resources and scholarship applications. Marcus's hands had stopped moving entirely. The transformer hung suspended in the panel, forgotten. Elena believed that every child, regardless of their zip code or their parents' income, deserved access to quality education. She spent her own money on school supplies. She created after-school tutoring programs. She wrote dozens of grant applications to bring technology into her classroom. She was the kind of teacher who changes lives simply by believing in her students' potential. The room had gone completely quiet. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. Elena Rodriguez died 3 years ago in a car accident, Victoria continued. She left behind a husband and a young son. Her husband, Marcus, works the night shift maintaining this very building where we're gathered tonight. While we sleep comfortably in luxury hotel rooms, Marcus Rodriguez ensures that the lights work, the heat flows, and the infrastructure holds together. He does this so he can be home during the day with his son, so he can help with homework, attend school events, and be present in the way that Elena would have wanted. Marcus felt tears running down his cheeks. Around the room, he could sense the shift in energy. People were no longer impatient about the darkness. They were listening. I know Marcus is here tonight, working to restore our power so we can continue celebrating the kind of educational programs that Elena Rodriguez fought for every single day of her teaching career. Marcus, if you can hear me, I want you to know that your wife's impact is still being felt. The literacy program she started at Roosevelt Elementary has expanded to 12 schools. The scholarship fund she established has sent 43 students to college. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and returned to his work. His fingers moved with renewed purpose as he installed the replacement transformer and began restoring power to the circuits. But his mind was racing. How did Victoria Sterling know about Elena, about his work schedule, about Diego? The lights flickered back to life, and the room erupted in applause. Not for the lights, Marcus realized, but for Victoria's words. He closed the electrical panel and began gathering his tools, expecting to slip back into invisibility now that his job was done. Instead, Victoria Sterling's voice called out across the room, "Marcus Rodriguez, would you please join me on stage?" The applause continued, but Marcus felt frozen. 500 pairs of eyes turned toward him. These were not his people. This was not his world. He was wearing a janitor's uniform at a black-tie gala, holding a toolbox instead of a champagne glass. But then he thought of Elena. She would have walked onto that stage with her chin up and her shoulders back, ready to speak truth to power about the children who needed advocates. She would have been brave. Marcus set down his toolbox and walked toward the stage, his work boots clicking against the marble floor. The crowd parted to create a pathway, and he caught glimpses of faces that no longer looked annoyed or impatient. Some were smiling, others had tears in their eyes. Victoria Sterling extended her hand as he climbed the steps to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus Rodriguez." The applause was thunderous now, but Marcus still didn't understand what was happening. He stood awkwardly beside Victoria, blinking in the bright stage lights, waiting for instructions. "Marcus," Victoria said, turning toward him with the microphone, "I have something to tell you, and I hope you'll forgive me for arranging this surprise without your permission." She paused, and Marcus could see his own confusion reflected in her eyes. 6 months ago, Diego's teacher submitted his essay to a statewide writing contest sponsored by Sterling Technologies. The prompt was "My Hero." Diego wrote about you, about how you work all night to keep buildings safe, then come home to help him with homework and make him breakfast and never complain about being tired. About how you taught him that real strength means taking care of the people you love, even when it's hard. Marcus felt his knees wobble. Diego had never mentioned entering any contest. Diego's essay was so compelling that our judging panel asked for a follow-up interview. That's how we learned about Elena, about your family story, about the challenges you faced and the grace with which you've handled them. Diego told us that his biggest dream was to make you proud, the way you've made him proud every single day since his mother died. Victoria reached into her jacket and withdrew an envelope. "Marcus, Diego's essay won first place in the statewide competition. The prize is a full scholarship to any college in the country, plus a $50,000 grant for educational expenses and family support." The room exploded in applause again, but Marcus couldn't process the sound. $50,000. College scholarship. Diego had won a contest. His 8-year-old son had written about him, called him a hero. But Victoria wasn't finished. "There's something else," she said. "In researching your background for tonight, I discovered that you're a licensed electrical engineer. You gave up a promising career to prioritize Diego's stability after Elena's death. Sterling Technologies is building a new headquarters downtown, and we need someone to oversee the electrical infrastructure for the entire complex. The position comes with a salary commensurate with your experience and qualifications, plus full benefits, flexible scheduling, and a commitment that you'll never have to choose between your career and your responsibilities as Diego's father." Marcus stared at her. Around the room, 500 people were on their feet, applauding not just for Diego's achievement, but for the recognition that sacrifice and dedication deserved reward. Marcus's voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll consider it," Victoria replied with a smile. "Say you'll let us support Diego's education the way Elena would have wanted. Say you'll allow your community to recognize what Diego already knows, that you're a hero, whether you're wearing a janitor's uniform or an engineer's hard hat. Say you'll let us support it, and yes, Elena would have loved this. She believed that education could change everything. She believed that every child deserved someone fighting for their future." "Yes," he said into the microphone, his voice stronger now. "Yes, I'll consider it. And yes, Elena would have loved this. She believed that education could change everything. She believed that every child deserved someone fighting for their future." The applause continued for what felt like an eternity. But Marcus was no longer overwhelmed by it. He was thinking about tomorrow morning, when he'd wake Diego up and tell him about the scholarship, about the job offer, about the essay that had opened doors neither of them had imagined possible. As the event concluded and guests began filing out, many stopped to shake Marcus's hand, to tell him about teachers who had changed their own children's lives. to share stories of unexpected second chances and the power of perseverance. Victoria Sterling waited until the crowd thinned, then approached him with a final surprise. "There's one more thing," she said. "We'd like to establish the Elena Rodriguez Memorial Scholarship Fund, providing annual educational grants to children who have lost parents. We'd like you to help us design the program to ensure it reaches the families who need it most." Marcus felt Elena's presence so strongly in that moment that he almost looked around for her. This was exactly the kind of program she would have created if she'd had the resources. Now it would exist because of her memory, because of Diego's words, because sometimes the universe conspires to transform tragedy into hope. She would have been honored, Marcus said, and she would have insisted that we start immediately. As Marcus drove home that night, still wearing his janitor's uniform, but carrying possibilities that felt larger than the city skyline, he thought about the power of being seen. For 3 years, he'd moved through the world assuming his struggles were invisible, his sacrifices unnoticed, his love for Diego insufficient to overcome the limitations of their circumstances. But Diego had seen him, really seen him, and in seeing him clearly, his 8-year-old son had created a bridge between their small world and opportunities that seemed impossible. Would you have had the courage to walk onto that stage? Let us know in the comments below. The apartment was quiet when Marcus arrived home, but he could hear Diego's steady breathing from the bedroom they shared. He looked at Elena's photograph on the mantel, at her smile that had always seemed to hold secrets about the goodness waiting around life's difficult corners. Tomorrow, everything would change. Diego would wake up to learn that his words had power, that his father was not just surviving but thriving, that the future Elena had dreamed for their family was still possible. Marcus would trade his janitor's uniform for blueprints and project meetings and the satisfaction of building something larger than himself. But tonight, in the quiet darkness of their small apartment, Marcus Rodriguez was simply a father who had learned that love, when witnessed and honored, could indeed move mountains. Sometimes the most extraordinary transformations begin with the most ordinary acts of devotion. Sometimes heroes wear janitor uniforms and work night shifts and believe that being present is enough, even when the world suggests otherwise. And sometimes, when we least expect it, the world proves that love is not only enough, it's everything. The Grand Meridian Hotel stood gleaming in the city lights, its electrical systems humming perfectly under Marcus's expert care. But more importantly, it stood as a testament to the truth Elena had always known, that every person's story matters, every child's voice deserves to be heard, and every act of love sends ripples into the world in ways we can never fully predict or control. Family is not just blood, but who chooses to stay. Never judge a person's worth by their circumstances. True love outshines wealth, status, and every barrier society creates between dreams and reality. Marcus Rodriguez had fixed more than lights that night. He'd illuminated the path forward for himself and his son, proving that sometimes the most powerful transformations happen when we least expect them, in the quiet moments between one life and the next. Subscribe for more powerful stories like this, and click on the video on the screen to watch the next one with a twist so powerful you'll never forget it.